The irony is not lost on me that my sermon is titled A Faith for All Seasons, and that I'm giving this sermon after one of the worst seasonal gridlocks in recent Atlanta history. More about that later. If you are a fan of classic television or classic television commercials, perhaps you remember a Wendy's commercial featuring an elderly and irascible Clara Peller peering over a competitor's hamburger and screeching, "Where's the beef?" Oh, this is call and response. I can feel it. When we peeked beneath the bun, viewers were shown pictures of the postage stamp burger, the golf ball burger, and in today's vernacular, we could add the micro burger and the nano burger. We all identified with the message. On the outside, the burger looked great, but look a little closer. There was little meat, little substance, little sustenance. To no one's surprise, you can still find that commercial on YouTube. And with today's Super Bowl, we find new commercials, hoping to find the staying power of Clara Peller's "Where's the Beef?" So too, Unitarian Universalists have been criticized as having little to sustain us in the crises of life. Where's the substance of your religious faith, we might be asked? How does your faith comfort you in death, or when a relationship has failed or is failing? How does your faith help you understand your own mortality, we are asked? Each of these examples is part of the human experience. How does our faith help us cope with pain and suffering as we live our lives? For Unitarian Universalist congregations to be viable religious communities, we must be more than a place to hear a lecture, discuss a book, listen to ubiquitous platitudes, or celebrate the ritual of conspicuous coffee consumption. Unitarian Universalists must be more than a religion of the head. It must also be a religion of the heart. And it must have something meaningful to say when our hearts are broken or are breaking. In his book, A Faith for All Seasons, Reverend William Murray argues that Unitarian Universalism is more than a fair weather faith. Unitarian Universalism serves us well in the good times, but it also provides a meaningful and strong foundation in difficult times as well. These difficult times are as varied as we are. It may be the mental health crisis of a close friend or a family member or even you. It may be the loss of a job or a financial crisis. It may be a life-threatening illness. It may be a child who is struggling mightily. Before looking at the Unitarian Universalist response to human pain and suffering, it is helpful and important to consider the origin of suffering. This is the ageless question of why. Why did he die so young? Why does she drink? Why did the Holocaust happen? To be quite candid, Unitarian Universalists are better at railing against what we reject about the traditional explanations of pain and suffering than we are able to affirm what we believe. No, disease is not God doling out punishment, we might say. No, my pain and suffering has nothing to do with Adam and Eve. No, suffering is not God's will. No, I am not suffering in order to become a better person. No, the devil is not to blame. Rather than rant and rave about what we reject, one of my greatest hopes is that Unitarian Universalists learn to boldly declare what we do believe. We have an amazing contribution to make to the marketplace of ideas. We have the opportunity to bring something truly meaningful to religious discourse. We have the ability to offer something more than ritualized platitudes in the face of real suffering. In his book, A Faith for All Seasons, Reverend William Murray claims that two of the sources of pain and suffering are human freedom and living in a natural world. By human freedom, he means it's that humans make conscious choices, daily decisions, and some of our choices result in suffering for ourselves and for others. Before I got married at the age of 35, I dated other women. Sometimes I ended the relationship, and sometimes it was ended for me. What I learned is that even if both parties operate with the best of intentions, and that is certainly not always the case, but even if both parties operate with the best of intentions, there is hurt and there is pain in rejection. Some examples of human freedom are much more challenging. Human freedom means we may choose to drive while intoxicated. Human freedom means that we may lash out against someone we care deeply about. Human freedom means that we may go to war before exhausting other options. Human freedom and choices that come out of that freedom can cause pain and suffering. I've heard human beings described as below the angels and above the beasts. This means that we are imperfect beings. And even though we have an evolved consciousness, we sometimes, perhaps often, make choices that do not live up to that elevated consciousness. Pain and suffering, though, does not always emanate from human choices. We live in a natural world full of mystery, unknowns, and changes that are sometimes dramatic. Liberal religion does not necessitate a divine purpose in everything. And we recognize that life can be harsh in an unfolding creation. At times, living in a natural world means living in the midst of natural disasters, and that can mean pain and suffering. The good news is that Unitarian Universalism is capable of meeting the crises of life. Our faith sustains us in many ways. When confronted with a crisis, perhaps our least understood resource is our own wellspring of inner strength. Now, this is not to suggest that we must hunker down and ride out the storms of life. Instead, it is a recognition that we are resourceful, we have endurance, and we are often able to handle conflict and cope when tragedy strikes. We may not be able to see it at the moment, and perhaps only the perspective of time gives us this insight. Again, this is not rugged individualism, but a claim that we are pliant, resilient, and creative in face of life's struggles. This week, while stuck at home, I read a short biography of naturalist John Muir. He endured repeated and serious whippings, beatings, if you will, by his father, and he was subjected to an oppressive religious faith. And yet he found deeply within himself a spirituality within nature. Muir was not bound by a harsh upbringing. He was resilient. As human beings, we are also able to love and forgive, to receive love and accept forgiveness. We must not underestimate the capabilities of the human spirit. In preparing for this sermon, I reached out to 2 Emerson members who have lost children to death. It is difficult to imagine surviving such an experience. From what they wrote back to me, and I asked them to share, and if I might share with you, from what they wrote back to me, I learned of the deep sadness and the pain of such a loss. But I learned many other things as well. I learned from one that time can begin healing even the deepest wounds. Wounds that may at the beginning seem irreparable and may even send us down a destructive path. I learned from these 2 members the need to recognize the importance of the impermanence of life, and that life offers no guarantees. I learned of the value of spiritual practice. I learned of the preciousness of each moment with others, and I learned of the importance of family and friends and community. That last learning, the value of family, friends, and community, means in times of need that others are an invaluable resource to us. The caring community, the caring faith community, is a resource we can draw on in times of crisis. I expect that each of us in our lives, that for each of us, there will be a time when the pain is so great that we will rely on others to hold us up when we cannot stand on our own. I know that I have personally sobbed uncontrollably in the caring embrace of my ministerial colleagues. And I have had at least one experience where I asked my partner, Carol, to hold me and to reassure me when I was facing a crisis that was taking the life out of me. Unitarian Universalists frequently underestimate the importance of the caring community. Being in community extends beyond the crises of life. Coming together on Sunday mornings is being part of a caring community. When individuals do not attend on a Sunday morning, it may be because the topic does not interest them. But to be most candid with you this morning, if that is the case, then I think that person has a diminished understanding of religious community. As much as I might want to believe that everyone comes to hear the speaker, right? I hope that that is not your first reason for coming to Emerson. This community is so much more than a 20-minute sermon. And when a person stays away, the caring community is less than it could be. Another way that Unitarian Universalism serves us in the crises of life is the gift that it offers us of unencumbered truth. This is Unitarian Universalism. More than any other faith tradition I know of, Unitarian Universalism is a commitment and a willingness to seek out truth wherever and in whatever form it may be found. We are not bound by doctrines and creeds that could not have anticipated life in the 21st century. The Reverend Marty Griffith was a Unitarian Universalist minister, my minister, in the 1990s. And she died in the 1990s after a difficult illness. Excerpts from her journal were shared at her memorial service. Marty Griffith was bolstered by a faith of integrity. We are sustained by a faith that makes no sugar-coated promises. We are humbled by a faith that recognizes our own mortality. In short, a faith that is able to grow and change is better equipped to sustain us as we grow and change, as we face the seasons of life. Perhaps the greatest gift that Unitarian Universalism offers us as we face life's challenges is the promise of hope. Again, this is not a sugar-coated promise, but it is the hope for a brighter tomorrow, that life's circumstances can improve, even if we can't see it in the moment. For some, this hope transcends our daily lives and envisions a force for good that some call God. This force for good can be described in many ways. For some, it is captured in the affirmation that the arc of the universe bends towards justice. For others, it is captured in belief in the transformative power of love. Up to this point, I've been speaking about Unitarian Universalism's response to pain and suffering in the harshest times of life. I've been responding to the criticism that Unitarian Universalism falls short when the going gets tough. Just as important, though, is our understanding of the meaning of life itself. How do we in liberal religion respond to the charge made against us that Unitarian Universalism provides no purpose in life? I again look to William Murray. First, he claims that life's meaning is not a given. It is rather something that each person must discover and create. I cannot think of a bolder and more meaningful claim. It's not the easy path that we follow, where the meaning of life is handed to us and we are expected to follow a set of rules if we wish to get the prize. We don't do that. Murray uses the crisis of Mickey Sachs, I always get that wrong, Mickey Sachs, in Woody Allen's film Hannah and Her Sisters to make his point. Sachs has a failed marriage, a marginal relationship with his children, and he feels he has no friends through his frenetic business pursuits. At a low point in his life, Sachs learns to create meaning in his life through relationships with others. Mickey Sachs found happiness, commitment, and peace in a life centered on his family and friends. Not surprisingly, this is the same place the Reverend Marty Griffith found meaning in her life, by being in right relationship with others and by being in relationship with the sacredness of life. Murray believes that for our lives to be most meaningful, we need to both savor and save the world, or save it, I should say. To savor life, we need to avoid the belief that only through long hours that next goal will bring us satisfaction that has been missing from our lives. Instead, we must savor the moments, the everyday experiences. Murray is emphasizing our discovery of the holy within each day. I wonder what that would look like for you, to discover the holy within each day. For Murray, meaning is also found through saving the world, he says. And here is an interesting twist. Murray says that one of the best ways to savor the world is to serve it. He quotes former Governor Mario Cuomo, who said, "The philosophers were right. St. Francis, Buddha, Mohammed, Maimonides all spoke the truth, and they said the way to serve yourself is to serve others." And Aristotle was right before them when he said the only way to assure your happiness is to learn to give happiness. Unitarian Universalism has a proud tradition of serving others. Our heritage of faith in action has been and continues to be our legacy of creating meaning for many Unitarian Universalists. Where is the beef of our religious faith? It is here in this room today. It is a faith tradition that acknowledges our own mortality and the mortality of those we love. It is a faith tradition that gently invites us to look within and find inner strength that we may not have known was there. It is a faith tradition that affirms the relationships we hold dear. It is the caring we offer one another. As we savor the world through friendships and as we serve each other and the wider world, Unitarian Universalism is a faith for all seasons. As we learned from the events of last week, with neighbor helping neighbor, stranger helping stranger, we saw how random acts of nature can be met with random acts of kindness. In Unitarian Universalism, though, It is our belief that kindness, that acts of kindness need not be random. In our congregations, we strive to be intentional as we covenant, to be in respectful and caring relationship with one another. Relationships that can sustain us, that can hold us in their embrace when life seems most fragile. And in times of crisis, we are sustained by hope. Hope found in the search for the meaning of life or for meaning in life. Hope found in the transcendent values of service and justice. And hope found in the transcendent and transformative power of love. The strength within, covenantal relationships, and hope. These are the substance and the sustenance of our faith. May it be so.